The taxpayers have said no to a bigger jail. We prefer investing in people's success, not in their failure. Bigger and bigger jails are self-destructive. They escalate expenses, trauma, and loss. I have references in the last slide that provide statistics. In this presentation, we want to talk about the hidden costs of building jails and how, number one, jails create trauma, bad habits, and destructive results for people. Number two, how the hidden punishment and penalties compound inside the community. Then three, how bigger jails extract money to national corporations through the privatizing of prison services, and how this hurts our local community. We also wish to talk about how there are restorative solutions that heal people and strengthen the community. The destructive cycle starts at an arrest. The domino effect of trauma compounds. Just an arrest, not even a conviction, can cause immediate trauma, shaming, and shunning. You can lose your income and enter a debt cycle where fines and penalties go up, and if you cannot afford to pay them, you often incur interest. You can lose your job and become unemployable. You can lose your driver's license, which is a common penalty, which makes it very difficult to get around or do anything in today's society, especially here in the West. Through a background check, you can end up losing housing, and you lose your reputation and lost referrals simply from an arrest or a paper or an article being published in a paper that accuses you of something. You can lose credit, and with no backup savings, it puts you in the poverty cycle. You get behind in your work and technology skills the longer you are arrested and in jail, and if you can't pay bail, you can't get out, you can't get back to work. You can lose your credentials, degrees, and certificates depending on the kind of accusation or the timing of that accusation and the fact that you may not be able to get to court or get a resolution on your case before you lose opportunities. You can end up with a conviction history, and a DUI accusation can completely change your life because the Department of Licensing works off of ticketing, not necessarily off of a conviction. Children-family relationships can be broken, a network of social support can be broken, and you and your family can be vulnerable to costly stress and accidents. The bottom line is there is a predictable result from an arrest only, and a conviction, of course, is much worse. People enter a relentless penalties to punishment to poverty recycling system. This system works for the system, but not for the people, and it has been developed over time. Most people think that the jail and incarceration problem is a criminal problem, that we basically pay for the county jail, we pay for law enforcement. It's a standard practice in our society. But over time it has changed. Once a person gets arrested in today's world, they immediately go through processing and start paying court fees, jail vendor fees, service fees, testing fees, and often a person can leave the county jail and after having incurred up to $10,000 in debts or costs, and that's fairly common. But there are unrecognized hidden costs that are incurred that are not spoken about when we talk about whether to increase the size of a jail. There are unrecognized costs to taxpayers that are not included in the budgets. Pension and benefit costs to staffers, to law enforcement, to the administration. There are fleet and facility costs that are incurred that are in a different part of the budget. Jail liabilities and medical costs are incurred. Lawsuit payout and insurances are incurred. There's an immeasurable cost to society that is not included in the cost of incarceration, as most people in bureaucracy talk about it. For example, nationally, there's a social justice study that was done. It's footnoted in the last page of the slides, where they say that the cost of incarceration is roughly $80 billion in the United States today. But when you include the costs of depression, suicide, divorce, mental illness, other kinds of losses, and the destruction of the workforce, the real cost of incarceration is closer to $1 trillion. That's a $920 billion shortfall for people when they're considering whether or not they want to fund more and more law enforcement and more jails and incarceration systems. There's another hidden cost to inmates and families that is not even talked about in that social justice study. The hidden cost to inmates and families that comes from an immediate need to buy phone cards that have a $10, $15 load fee, plus you pay for the phone calls out of the jail. Inmates end up having to pay, and their families end up having to pay bail, towing, Department of Licensing fees. They pay for tests, insurance, electronic home monitoring, and the list goes on. Technically, all of these issues are paid for outside of the bureaucratic analysis because they get only a % of revenue goes to the county. Most of this is private profit to the corporations that contract with the county corporation, but the individuals pay direct to these corporations. Here's an example of a commissary order in Whatcom County at the Whatcom County Jail. If someone is inside the jail and their family wants to send them a special meal, let's say for Thanksgiving. In this particular case, what I pulled up on the iCare website was a full meal deal where you could spend $41.99 to basically buy 25 or 24 bags of top ramen for your family member. And the rest of this is essentially junk food. If you look down through the list, it's chili rice and beans, it's various kinds of top ramen, crackers, dill pickles, snack foods. And yet you pay, the family pays $50 with shipping and handling to get this to their family member. And if you look through the iCare packaging and all of their different deals, if you click down through the gifts, the burgers, the general merchandise, the salt and sweet treats, you'll see that the markup on this product is substantial. The profiteering is extraordinary. This iCare packaging is done through Aramark Industries. Aramark is an international food vending corporation that provides foods to colleges, universities, prisons across the nation, and to stadiums. It's one of the largest, it is the primary contractor with Western Washington University, as well as the contractor for Whatcom County for the Whatcom County Jail. What's happened is that as the jail industry has expanded from the privatization of prisons that happened back in the 70s and 80s, government has expanded its role as corporations, and the government corporations now do business with social service corporations together with jail and prison vending corporations, and we have essentially created a faux economy that is operating behind the scenes, that is punishing our taxpayers in extraordinary ways. And it's very difficult for a person who has been arrested to stand up and fight back, because it's become a very, very complex, very convoluted system. In Whatcom County, the Vera Institute just did some research and found that there's at least 38 different ways that they're going to look into the administration of law and justice in Whatcom County from just a bureaucratic standpoint. How are people getting lost in the system, and why is it that the average length of stay in Whatcom County Jail has gone from 9 days to 22 days in the past decade or so? If you're looking at this particular chart, I label it the cash generating industry, but it's really a privateering business model. All of the things at the top, from the towing, the phone calls, to the Department of Licensing, to booking, penalties, assessments, to the electronic home monitoring, bail, legal and financial fees, and commissary, attorney's appeals. These are direct costs incurred by families that is not included in the cost of incarceration figure that a bureaucracy will use when trying to convince the public to pay more to expand a jail. They also don't talk about all the financial mega business that is being done in a money game by the investor part of our marketplace that invests in and supports the expansion of credit card companies, finance companies. The prison building contractor industry has been growing. The data mining and security and insurance industries grow. All of these are happening, and this does not include the fact that we have changed to insourcing to prisons and even jails in a way with the work release programs. Not that all are bad, it's just that when you add all of this up, what it's created is this huge money game that is cycling behind the scenes of the jail and prison industrial economy that is affecting our local business and our local community. The profiteering accelerates on volume. There's a guaranteed churn of people into the system. Profit margins increase. There's controlled conditions. Once arrested, you become captive to an entire exploitation industry that's simply extraordinary, and most of us never address it. We don't look at it. We don't understand it. We don't even track it. In Whatcom County, we've been asking the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, who is charged with looking at how to reduce and turn back the cost of incarceration in Whatcom County. We've been asking them to do research into how many corporations are there here that are truly in business with the county corporation to penalize and harm our citizens just because they've been arrested. The community is damaged by these escalating hard costs, and if we pass the sales tax, it will get worse. The sales tax increases revenue to government corporations and basically for unrestrained expansion because of the way the laws are written. Once the county gets the tax, they can basically move the money any way they want, through the general fund or for the costs just to increase law and justice needs. It's a blank check that increases costs and raises taxes for local businesses. The increase in sales tax removes discretionary spending from family budgets, and it's a discriminatory tax that impacts people. If we were to pass that tax to build a $128 million jail estimated, those costs are likely to double, even triple, to up to $300 million. That's what people who are experienced in costing tell us. If there's a 30-year capital bond that starts, it may cap out at 30 years, but the second 0.1% sales tax goes on for forever. So these operating costs put the youth, our children, into tax bondage forever. There truly is no valid needs assessment that has been done that includes an analysis of alternatives to building the jail. What would we do if we didn't build a bigger jail? Why can't we fix the current jail? Why can't we do prevention, intervention, early childhood education, trauma intervention processes? We can. There is no proven demand for a high debt, expensive project that is viable and yields a good return on investment to the taxpayers. Instead, that forever debt expands bureaucracy and increases the ability of the law enforcers to increase rules and laws, which further stifle people and bureaucratically create a boondoggle for us. Lastly, when you put the largest capital expansion project in place in Whatcom County with $128 million invested in it and high volume overhead, what this does is this changes the job conditions in Whatcom County. It becomes a major industry that supports a jail-based economy. It harms our local workforce as people become cash-generating assets once they get arrested. Families are damaged and displaced, the social structure is compromised, and ultimately our children will grow up to become inmates or employees of the jail industries. This is not okay. It is more valuable and a better rate of return for the public if we invest in people's success, not in their failure. We can do things differently. Number one, we can fix the current jail. There is money inside our budget to do that, and this would save us hundreds of millions of dollars in capital debt and operating overhead. 2, we can do diversion before arrest, not after. We can use also the current work release facility and increase our intervention, recovery, and reentry after arrest programs. That stops the recidivism rate. We can do pre-arrest prevention like mental health intervention, trauma recovery, and healing programs. These are things that it just requires a budget shift and a paradigm shift in thinking to help implement. We can build restorative housing, do relationship skills building inside those housing programs, and implement job renewal programs. We can develop jobs with restorative justice and a healing center for revitalizing our workforce. These are all things that are viable, they're affordable, and it helps us to build jobs before jails. We can educate before incarcerate. This is good for society. It's good business. My name is Joy Gilfil, and I'm president of the Restorative Community Coalition. Our goal has been to understand addictive economic dynamics locally so that we could replace mass incarceration with mass empowerment of people instead. People who become productive members of society become healthy taxpayers and good workers. When we heal society, the community benefits all ways. We have produced several reports and a website, the restorativecommunity.com website, where you can download these PDFs that talk about alternatives. You are more than welcome to go there, download it, join us, help us. Here are some facts, statistics, and references that might be of interest to you. Check it out. In Whatcom County, there is no better time to stop patterns that don't work. Let's invest in people, not in failure. Let's do restorative economic solutions. We can do it. We must.